Hey, what's up, guys? Node investor here. Node investor here with the 100 R's behind it, right? That's what everyone's doing these days. All the R's, the burr. What's up, guys? Hope everyone is doing well. I have been on a little bit of a hiatus, taking a break. Obviously, it was holiday weekend for many of us here. And just kind of taking it easy. I know it's a little bit slower out there these days anyway, but the price of Bitcoin here let's zoom out here. Just look at this. The last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days have been in a narrow $400 trading range, give or take some wicks, but not a whole lot going on out there. But I think we are approaching an apex here, a decision point. As always, Bitcoin doesn't stay flat for too long before something happens, and I'm thinking we're going to see some movement here this week out of this little tiny range we're in. But I want to talk about some big picture numbers, some broader views to be looking, and my bias currently, just so you guys know, I'm still leaning bearish right now. The last few days, the last week or so, haven't been trading that much. I've taken some pretty good trades in and out, short, flat, either on BTC or ETH. But that's really it. So I'm still leaning short bias, but I'm always looking at both sides of the coin, if you will, both potential scenarios. And if I'm very, at this point, very ready to go long if price dictates that. But there's some levels I want to see taken out to the upside before I'm convinced that we're going to start moving higher again. For now, I'm still in the camp of I think we got some more pullback before it's over. But hey, I hope I'm wrong. I would rather be wrong in that scenario than right, but it is what it is. And so for now, looking short, but keeping it tight and looking for a potential turnaround. But so let's just look at this. So yeah, if you're just getting tuned in here, I haven't gone in over key levels yet. I am just getting started. Just sent out the link. Gonna let some people start joining here. Sup from Slovenia. Let me see what else we got. So I saw Melissa on the chat room saying, hey, are you still alive? I am. I'm alive. Thank you for asking. And just as a quick aside, I am looking to make some potential changes in terms of my schedule on like content and frequency and all that good stuff. Haven't decided what the cadence is going to be yet. At this point, I'm leaning towards a weekly video updates, market updates. And I was doing like Monday morning live stream, checking out potential setups for the week, some midweek updates. I thought about going back to do I just do kind of a couple of short videos a week? Mostly I've been doing live streams lately, but I'm thinking maybe I'll either do just kind of a one weekly wrap-up video, big picture market view. I'm not sure. Just some thoughts. I am just throwing that out there. So for those of you that have been following this channel for a while, as always, it's going to be changing. There'll be different things along the way. I have some ideas. I'm thinking even maybe, well, I'll leave that one on the table. But one thing that I do want to share, which I thought was funny, a little bit of a hilarity out there. This month, April, is my 3-year anniversary of my YouTube channel. My first video came out late April of 2017. I forgot to put a link on here, but I will share this as we approach. I'll probably do kind of an anniversary video. But if you want to watch this, my condolences if you want to rewatch this. You've been fairly warned, but I was watching this earlier. It's a short video. I basically just talked about Ethereum and the coin market cap, and 4 minutes and 34 seconds. But I'm not going to say my channel is the best out there. I know it's not, and my quality of content, I don't have a whole lot of polish to it. But man, I've come a long way since this first video. I was watching this going, oh my god, this is brutal. But I'll post some links out there. It's kind of funny. 4-minute video of my very first video talking about ETH, potentially breaking out. And I just spent the whole 4 minutes just looking at the daily chart other than the coin market cap chart. So kind of interesting. But, you know, I've learned a little bit along the ways here since those 3 years. But, yeah, hitting the 3-year time frame, it's kind of hard to believe. And what a ride, huh? I mean, 3 years, we were looking at ETH at $50 at the time, and Bitcoin at the time was like $1,300, and has come a long ways. I think I've met most of my goals for what I had envisioned when I started this channel, and that was primarily to be an education center, right? Obviously market content, but also education. I mean, the primary reason I started this channel, for those of you that are newer, the core reason I really started this was because when I started doing my own crypto trading back in 2016, you know, like anybody else, I was looking online, what are other people thinking, what's going on? And at that time, you know, it's changed since then, but at that time, there were very few crypto technical analysis channels, and I won't mention any names, but to say the least, they were poor. They were subpar. You saw line charts, you saw all kinds of weird technical analysis, and I had already been doing trading and technical analysis mostly from the stock side and some gold and silver stuff, but you know, it was lacking in the crypto space. And so, you know, that's really the reason I started it. I said, you know, there might be a need here, a little bit of a void to fill. And that was my primary motivator, was just to share my thoughts. I was just looking at the channels that were out there. And I want to do some educational stuff on technical analysis and reading charts and all that. And, you know, fast forward 3 years, there's a ton of really good content out there besides myself that's filling that gap now. So it's come a long ways. But you know, that was, I think I went in the right direction there when I was first starting my channel. But that's, you know, it is what it is. And there's other good content out there. You know, charts are not for everybody. Some people just want, you know, kind of the macro view, the news view, you know, there's some channels that focus only on the technical aspect of crypto and all that good stuff. And those are great too, by the way. So there's a little bit for everybody here on YouTube. And I know some new channels that have got started since then, and there's always some good times. But yeah, it's interesting. We've come a long ways. But all right, so without further ado, let's get to it here. So looking at the charts of the daily chart of BTC here, there's a couple of things that you may note here. I've got this big white line at the top. That is the 50-day moving average. That's the simple moving average, the SMA. And then my two typical moving averages here, the exponential moving averages, 10 and 22 EMAs on the daily chart here. And we can see very clearly here that the 50 daily SMA has been that rejection point. If you missed it, I posted a tweet a couple of days ago, right when we were approaching this, and I mentioned, hey, you know, this is the 200-day is right here, the 100-day is right here, the SMA 50 is right above us. We have some resistance here. We've bounced quite a bit. At that time, I was thinking you know, we've got this rising wedge at the time that was forming, and so yeah, I was bearish, and I said I'm looking for at least a pullback. And the reason that was what I was looking for is if you look at the weekly chart, there was a rising bounce with lower and lower volume every week. And at best, I said, you know, we need a higher low at least, right? A little bit of a pullback to kind of pause and then go from there if it's going to continue higher. I didn't know if it would pause right at the 50 SMA. It could have gone a little bit higher, but I was going to be really shocked if it broke through that 8K level. One, because that was the 200-day moving average, as well as the top of this big red candle, right? The big washout day. We've had a solid bounce since then. At best, we need a little bit of a pullback, a little bit of a, you know, higher low at least to test support before things get going again. And so zooming in here, let me go to that other chart real quick. I'm just trying to keep these charts clean. Zooming in, you can see the daily chart has been in a very tight range from a closing basis. Yes, there's been some wicks in and out. We'll look at the 4-hour, 1-hour charts here in a sec, but on a closing basis, there's been a very tight range, and today's candle is trying to push to the lower end of that again. Now, if today's candle closed right here, let's say this was the close, this would be bearish. It'd be a bearish break. We'd break on the outside of this range. We'd break below yesterday's low, and I'd be leaning bearish again, looking for a crack to the downside. Now, the key levels that I'm going to be watching, at least on a daily closing basis, let me zoom in here, are two levels. On the upside, is this basically 7K level. Call it 7K. It's probably closer to 69 and change, but around 7K. That also gets you right at the 50 SMA again. On the downside, if we see the price lose 6,600 and probably a little higher than that, that just looks bearish in my opinion. I'm thinking we're going lower. The reason I'm thinking 7K on the upside, that's this most recent range. That's also the 50-day. We'll look at the 4-hour chart, show some more information there. But on the downside, I think is the more important level to be watching as support. If you look at these candles here that bounced on that first rally before we had the pullback, the top of that range there is 67.40. That's essentially where price is at right now. And the bottom range here, the bottom half of this is, you know, this 66 round number, which is a significant level on the 4-hour chart. If you zoom out, you start looking at these lows down here, that's 66.84. You know, the top of this wick here is 65.99, this range. So, you know, breaking outside of this range and you start to see some momentum to the downside. That's just my guess. And that's what I'm looking for. So, you know, if you're looking for what's kind of the range to be watching, 6,600 to the downside, 7,000 to the upside. It's a pretty narrow range, all things considered. And you know, if you're flat, I would probably just wait until this resolves itself one way or the other, right? Wait for it to crack over 7K or wait for it to lose 66 and trade in the direction of the momentum. That's my approach. And if you're long, you want to keep an eye on 6,600. If you're short, you definitely want to keep an eye on 7K to the upside. And that's just the very near-term levels. I'm discounting this big wick only because I think if we recapture 7K, we're going to go above that 7,100 pretty quickly and start retesting at least the 7,400 level. So those are the two levels I'm watching. But for now, I'm thinking we got a little bit more downside. So that's the bias that I'm coming in from. Leaning bearish. I would love to be wrong. And what I'll be looking for is, you know, you had this most recent swing low. You have the potential for a higher low here on this 4-hour chart. Potential. But again, it's just sloppy, right? It's got this low, you got this high, this drop lower, lower high. You know, it's just very choppy, sloppy. This is totally made up. This is not an official pattern, but I like to joke around. This is the ninja star pattern, the scarecrow pattern, right? That's what I'm looking at here when you see these ugly price patterns that do this, right? That's the ninja star, the scarecrow, and that's just joking aside here. But if you look at the daily chart again, the trend is still lower, right? You got lower highs, lower lows coming in. So I'm still cautious. Big picture, I'm still cautious until we take out that upside level that I just mentioned. And if we do, that'd be great. I'd be really surprised that that was it. That was the extent of the pause. But the pause has carried out long enough, right? You had the RSI just kind of going flat here. On the lower time frames, RSI has fully reset. And so, you know, I'll be totally clear and say it could definitely go either way from here. But we just got to wait and see. At this point, that's really what it is. It's a wait and see game and wait to see if we break to the upside and see if we can get some more upside momentum. If we do, then yes, you're looking at 8K as your next big test. And then above that, you're looking at, you know, mid to upper 8Ks, but one day at a time. On the downside, if we see that pullbacks continue, I'm still leaning in favor of some of these fib retracement levels here, using Coinbase as the price here. The 382 is still down here near 6,100. So, you know, could we see that big washout low? Then, yeah. My near-term targets are, if I'm short here, I'm going to start looking to bank some profits, 6,400, 6,200, in and around there, and anticipate a little bit of a bounce around that 6,100, 6K. If it continues to shoot through there, then 5,800, 5,600 is the most I want to see this one go. And I'd set a nice higher low on the weekly. Let's go to that weekly chart real quick. And you can see here, let me take off these longer term moving averages because I'm not using those on the weekly charts. But we can see it was the 10 EMA on the weekly was the bounce. I'd like to see a pullback. And again, this bounce was on lower and lower volume. I mean, maybe you can discount this wick, but that's why I'm looking for a bounce, you know, a pullback. I'm thinking we at least need a higher low on the weekly. It'd be ideal if we got a higher low. Don't want to see a double bottom on the weekly. I don't want to really see that, but a higher low would be good. And just keep in mind what I mentioned, you know, during the last few streams, right? We had the big sell-off in late 2018, and just remember how this one bottomed out. Just keep this in the back of your mind, right? You had the big drop, you had a bounce, another double bottom, and then it just went sideways and choppy for a while. I still think we need that. I still think we're going to get that. You'll have a big wick to the downside. People might start saying, oh, here we go. Here comes 5K. Here comes 4K. Here comes 1200 again. And we won't. And then it'll bounce. And you'll start saying, oh, here comes the 10K again. And it just kind of goes meandering for a little while. And then we finally get the breakout one way or the other. So I still think we need that. I still think we'll see something along those lines. Maybe we get a bounce here, maybe meandering, and then it finally takes off. That'd be ideal. Now the halving is coming up. I know it's starting to get a little bit more attention, but honestly, the halving hasn't really been that big of a factor lately. It's been primarily the macroeconomic picture. It's been COVID-19. It's been what are the stocks doing, and Bitcoin largely has been tracking to BTC or to this S&P and the Dow. When stocks across the world are selling off like they are a little bit this morning, then yeah, you get to sell off. And when they're having a positive day or a little bit of a bounce, BTC rallies. I've noticed that's been the trend here, and for now, that's going to be the scenario to be watching. So that's why I'm still leaning bearish. Now, looking at stocks real quick before we deep dive some of these other charts, I still think stocks need to pull back here. They've bounced right into the moving averages that I was looking at. Let me go here real quick. And on lower volume here, we're about to begin earnings season here. And so you've had a pretty nice bounce into the stock markets. This was kind of my near-term target here on the stock market side of things. But it's very selective. I'm talking just the indices here. I think they need to pull back here, at least at a higher low, same scenario here. But I don't think it's over for the market. You could still see a double bottom, maybe even a new low, because of the long-term economic implications from this entire shutdown. Things, like the Qs are much stronger, and that's because you have names like Amazon, $2,300 a share, taken out to the old highs, new all-time high territory for Amazon. You have things like Netflix, which are very strong as well, breaking into new high ground here as well. And so, the NASDAQ 100 is showing a little bit more relative strength. You got things like Tesla bouncing pretty good. Apple's been laggard lately, but it is bouncing. So that's why the S&P 500 is not quite as strong looking as the NASDAQ, but the broader economy, the S&P is a better representation of that. And so I'm thinking we've got some more pullback to go, especially as earnings get underway. And when it comes to stocks and earnings, it's never the news, but it's the reaction to the news, right? And what I mean by that is, how does the stock market react to not so much what the earnings were last quarter, but what they're saying might happen going forward? And that's going to be the big thing people are watching, right? What are all these CEOs going to be saying about the economy going forward? Everyone expects it to be ugly. Everyone expects it to be, yeah, things are going to get bad. They're going to probably get worse before they get better. We laid people off. Revenues have dropped, blah, 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 blah. But if there's even some glimmer of, hey, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be, and we're already seeing a little uptick and blah, 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 then I think stocks would rally in that scenario. But again, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. And I think it's going to be more what's the reaction to the earnings and the conference call, and not so much the actual earnings. Boeing, oh my God, Boeing. I don't see it positive for Boeing. They got earnings on the 27th. Not going to be good there. But a lot of big companies have earnings next week. Facebook, Amazon, all those guys. So keep an eye out for that. We'll see how things go. But for now, if stocks pull back, I think that's going to put a little bit of pressure on the crypto markets. And so I would expect Bitcoin pulls back a little bit as well. So those are my thoughts there. Big picture view. Let's deep dive a little bit here. I'll try to keep the stream relatively short. Let me catch up on the comments here real quick, see if there's any thoughts. I want to go, yeah, the whole stablecoin thing. No surprise there. I mean, I'm really surprised that we haven't had any bad stablecoin news in so long. It seemed like we were well overdue for some stablecoin drama. But this is like I said, this is an opportunity for the powers that be to take some ground, during this crisis. Unfortunately, and something like attacking crypto or banning stable coins would go under the radar in the current environment. Unfortunately, obviously on crypto Twitter, I mean, it'd be all the rage, but we follow it closely. But the average person out there wouldn't care less if there was some overreaching on the regulation side of things. Hey, Munter in the house. All right, good to see you guys here. Would you say fiat printing could become a big factor in Bitcoin's price? Yes, long term though. Near term, I don't think it's going to be a factor. People, I mean, I know people talk about it and the gold bugs, and believe me, I've been very well entrenched in the gold bug community. I started my trading career as a gold bug, if you will, and so I understand the mindset behind that. But I mean, the gold bugs have been talking about this since the 2000s. And when Ben Bernanke was the Fed chairman and all his helicopter money and all that, they thought, we were going to see a melt up in the price of gold. And it didn't happen. And the reason it hasn't happened is because the US dollar is still the reserve currency of the world, and most commodities are priced in US dollars, oil included. And until the overprinting of money starts to actually affect the US dollar and its status, you're not going to see the melt up, the inflationary depression that people are expecting. Long term, yeah. I mean, it's just, this is not sustainable by any means. The amount of debt that we see now, in fact, inflation only helps countries with a lot of debt because it lowers the cost of capital for them, right? The interest payments are going to start to get pretty high for a lot of these countries, and a way that they deal with that is by inflating the currency, because it inflates away the debt, which means, your dollar's worth less, so the interest payments are worth less, so it's not as big of a deal. I say all that to say this: longer term, yes, I do think it's a factor for both gold and Bitcoin. And especially with Bitcoin seeing the halving, the inflation rate of Bitcoin is going to start to drop. Longer term, meaning months and years out, I'm bullish, absolutely. Near term, heck, it's anyone's game. It's a trader's game near term, right? So that's, those are my thoughts there. And I'm leaning more in favor of Bitcoin than gold, by the way. I mean, gold has had its uses. It's certainly used by by reserve banks and all that stuff, but Bitcoin's definitely the digital gold these days. And so I'd for the average person, I think I'd lean more in favor of that. All right. Oh yeah, they're definitely starting their own stable coin, no doubt. I'm just waiting for that to roll out. It's just a matter of when, not if. Absolutely. Okay, let's do a couple quick deep dives here, and then I will go through some of the names. So looking at the Node Insiders metrics, there was a question in the Slack group yesterday talking about the trading bot. It had gone bullish very briefly after being flat, and now it's flat again. The BMI is weak. 4-hour bull momentum is weak. The 12 hours weak. The 24 hours weak. So everything's weak across the board. We briefly saw a bounce. And so to kind of explain that a little bit, here's the 4-hour view. And we had a long signal issued. The bottom indicator here, by the way, that's the bull momentum index. And it briefly had a bullish crossover. The moving averages that I track, on at least on the 4-hour, they're kind of just flat, right? So notice these moving averages are going flat here. They're not trending. They're not high. They're not low. They're positively correlated, but price is trading below them. And so what I mean by all this is when the price action is this flat, and again, keep an eye at the daily chart, right? The daily chart has been in a very flat range. I'm less inclined to trust the signals of the shorter time frame. So when the 4-hour bot goes long or short, I may just wait for price to actually break range because it's susceptible to whipsaw when this is flat and choppy, right? You get the flat, and then you get the pop, and then you get the drop, and then you get the pop, and it's just within a very constrained range. And so it's easy for the indicators to be tricked, if you will. They're just susceptible to whipsaw. Any indicator, by the way, does that, right? When the markets are not trending, when they're doing these little things like this, when they're flat, range bound. And in those scenarios, then I'll just zoom out. I'll tend to go with a little bit of a higher time frame. And in that scenario, the BMI continues to drop. The daily trading bot went flat, about 2 weeks ago after having been short for over a month. It would not surprise me to see this one go short again here soon. And so that's why I'm leaning short. But hopefully, it's a fake out and we get something like this, then it starts to trend, and we start to see some long signals on the daily chart, which we haven't seen in, 2 months at least. So it's been a while since we've seen any long signals on the daily chart. Hey, Christopher, Got a lot of folks coming in. Thanks for being here, guys. All right, so that's that. Hope that helped. I mean, I know that there's a lot more to this indicator and the bot status and all that, but I hope that helped explain a little bit. So for now, both the daily and the 4-hour strategy are flat. The 4-hour was long yesterday very briefly after being flat, but it could just as easily go short here. If we go to the altcoins, let me go look at those real quick. Let's let those refresh here. I'm going to sort by just status here. You know, alts are mixed. They've had a nice little bounce versus Bitcoin. Most of them are still trending well versus Bitcoin. A few of them have fallen into the red and yellow, but overall not bad. Versus BTC, the bot's still definitely preferring alts versus Bitcoin all around. You look at some of the things that it's long, Tezos, XRP, XMR, XLM, Tron even. No, it's flat Tron, but it's showing bullish. Let's see here, Atom. So, you know, when it comes alts versus Bitcoin, I'm still leaning in favor of alts, especially if we get that higher low and things start to rally. I think alts are still due for a little bit more bounce action. So before I go into the all BTC pairs, let's look at the ETH USD side. This is another one I was watching. Couple key levels on the ETH USD pair. Pretty straightforward in my opinion. If you lose 150 on ETH, maybe even higher at this point, 153, then that's a bearish break. On the upside, taking out 161 looks really good here. If we go to the 4-hour view, it's decision time, right? I mean, you got this starting to trend here. You've got lower highs, but it's starting to hold this pattern. Is it a bull flag? Is it a retest of this prior breakout point? It could be. And so, you know, once it starts to take out that 161, that looks positive. Then at that point, I'm looking for a retest of the highs, but most likely it'll be a continuation setup. So in that scenario, I'm looking for, you know, close to 190 as my target. But again, on the way down, if it loses that 153, 150, then you're looking for a higher low. Most likely will be in the 130s pretty quick. So ETH, again, kind of going flat, but I'm liking ETH versus BTC. So if we go to ETH BTC here real quick. Again, it's already breaking out, right? So you can see that it's been in this little bit of a downtrend. Not a huge breakout, by the way, but it is starting to at least buck the trend, if you will. You had some recent resistance points here that now price is starting to edge above. And so that's good. That's a continuation pattern, by the way, after this breakout that we saw here, this quick run up, just kind of started to grind lower on the daily, trying to bounce here a little bit. If you go to that daily chart, again, bouncing right off the moving averages there. After pausing, a little bit of a bull flag, definitely looks like a continuation pattern to me. So again, that's another reason I'm preferring alts versus Bitcoin. But you know, it just kind of depends on what Bitcoin does here. It's decision time. It could go either way. I'm leaning bearish, but I hope it's a higher low, and I hope the alts pop. One thing to be watching here is if Bitcoin does take a spill, do the alts see a little bit of green, meaning the USD pairs don't fall as hard as Bitcoin and they start to rally on this scenario? In that case, then much more bullish on the alts, because when Bitcoin does bounce, I think these continue much higher. So looking pretty good for the alt side. Here's Tezos. Again, potential continuation pattern. This was the prior breakout point on the daily chart. You've had 2 attempts back at that. Hasn't quite broken the uptrend, but again, similar to ETH, when you start to see this one take it out, then that's the levels to be watching on the upside there. Some of the other ones that have been strong, Stellar Lumens, again, very similar price action on almost all of these, basically retesting these breakout points, looking for that continuation to the upside. XRP versus Bitcoin, not quite as strong, actually looks a little bit more bearish in my opinion. EOS versus Bitcoin, losing that rising trend here. See that lower rising trend, but again, similar action here. So many of these names are just flat right now. And I think they're just kind of waiting for BTC here. What's going to happen? I think we'll see that here this week. So just kind of waiting for this whole thing to resolve itself one way or the other here. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Let's see here. Christopher in the house. Descartes. Oh, yeah. Let me see here. I'm going to try to catch up on some of these. Yeah, gold is hard to get into right now. Plus the premiums, especially when markets are doing what they're doing right now, they really spike. And it's especially if you're buying physical, like if you're not buying an ETF, right? ETF is probably the best way to do it at this point. But if you're buying physical bullion, you need price to rise like 10 to 15% just to break even. And that's not a small move for gold, by the way. So it is more of a much long-term play. And generally speaking, gold is just kind of an inflation hedge anyway, right? Or a security, like an insurance hedge. It's not something, at least bullion, right? Physical bullion, it's not something you flip in and out of frequently because of the fees. You'll lose all of it on the fees. If you're trading it, then you probably want to just go with options or futures or ETFs. So Ethereum or Bitcoin, Ethereum for now. All right, so let's see what else is going on here. I'm going to go back to the trending list, see what we got there. Some of the names here, Luna, I noticed has popped up. Microcap names, Stratus, Engine Coin here, Atom. Let's go look at Atom. We just looked at ETH, Tezos. Let's see here, Cardano, ARK, 0x. Quite a few names on here. Some small caps, a lot of small caps, but we'll see. Look at a few of these here. I'm going to start with Atom. I'm going to look at Atom BTC. Potential little cup and handle setting up here on this 4-hour view. Again, this was a continuation breakout right here. So, if you missed this pullback, you had a breakout, but then it hasn't really followed through. But you can see it's got a very clear resistance level here right around that. What is that? 35.20 or so, 35.25. And getting much above that, it's kind of cup and handle type of signature, right? You had this prior lip, a little bit of a pullback, the big volume push. And this would be your handle in and around here as the moving averages catch up. And so if this one again is, it's got the wicks, but I'd be looking at, 37.07 as your next target if it continues higher, and then around 3900s on the upside there. If this is a cup and handle and you do a little bit of a measured move, then you're looking at, somewhere just above 3750. So not too shabby there, but Atom certainly showing some relative strength versus BTC here. The bot status again, this one's showing a strong indication on the bull momentum index. Again, this is a combined rating, meaning 4-hour and the daily chart. And then of course, long on the 4-hour, flat on the day. Interesting. What's the day chart look like? It's probably flat because of this long downtrend. It's probably not above any sort of longer term moving averages, but it's about to be, so could go long on the daily bots here soon enough. What else here? Stratus, man, there's a name from yesteryear. Let's go look at that bad boy. Stratus. Every time I look at this, I just go, range bound. And that's my answer again. Range bound. Not a whole lot to do until it breaks out of this range that it's been in for the last 10 years. So, yeah, that's it. Tomo. Here we go. Looking at the Tomo chain. All right, a little bit of a bounce here on the short-term time frame. Seeing the break of range here on the 4-hour charts. See if it can continue, but certainly not too shabby there. It's tougher to trade those smaller cap names because they very volatile, move up and down quickly, but there you go. Let's go look at ARK and 0x. Some other small cap names here. ARK, big pop, big drop. Man, what kind of a drop is that? That's from wick to wick right now. That's about a 23% drop after a 52% pop in one candle. There you go. Small caps for you. 0x. 0x. Oh, this looks pretty nice. I like this setup here. Very symmetrical. You got the lower trend line rising. You've got it about to take out some resistance here. Definitely worth watching here. Good continuation. If you go to the daily chart, it looks like it's about to pop. First thing it needs to do is clear that prior high, but above that, you've got some room to run. So, yeah, 0x, not too bad here. How's it look on the USD side? Yeah, pretty indeterminate, just like most other names at this moment. Very flat here in the last few days, so not a lot of indication, but these are good candidates for potential breakouts, especially if you're doing things like buy stop orders and all that. If you have them kind of just predetermined, at this point I'd be looking at like 1720, 1740 as my levels, and if it breaks above, then you catch it, and if nothing happens, then nothing's lost, right? You don't really care at that point, but it is leaning bullish and trending higher a little bit here, so definitely one to watch. And what else? Cardano. ADA BTC. Cardano, which many people will call vaporware, but I would definitely be watching this little level here, because what happened is it had this breakout. You see this little rally, pulled back, retest, but now it's kind of forming this little descending triangle, but so far holding above that prior level and trying to get above the downtrend line here. So I'd be watching this one for sure. Link. Yeah, let's go look at Link. Link has finally had a pullback here. This is the 4-hour view of Link. Finally got going here. Very nice breakout. Look at that move it had a few weeks, a week and a half ago. Finally broke out of that range, got going, and finally pulling back here. Letting these moving averages catch up on the daily. Still has a little bit of work to do on the 4-hour view. However, it's kind of right there. Where's the 50 MA? 50 EMA. So you're kind of approaching that this little zone right here. So definitely this would be the place to watch it. If it starts to bounce, it looks like it's trying to hold. So I'd be looking for a continuation move higher on the daily chart, which at that point you expect would take this prior high out and then continue higher. So that's good, considering it's had this big drawdown when the whole market sold off, and Link previously had been one of the strongest names out there before that big sell-off. But nice recovery there. All right. Let me see here. Raven. I haven't looked at that one in a while. Raven. No love for Raven, man. Look at this. Just really getting really flat, non-volatile. Still just trending lower, though. Even in this recent bounce, Raven didn't show a whole lot of life. So until that changes, until it at least takes out, what is that, 250, probably not a whole lot to do in that bad boy just yet. It's the next. 1100 is definitely the level to be watching on this one. That'd be a nice breakout if it can do that. What you want to see here is this pattern type of thing hold. You want to see a higher low right here, then take out that 1100. Digibyte. Oh man, I haven't looked at Digibyte in forever. Digibyte, and this is on Bitfinex. How's it look on the Trex? Digibyte did have a little bit of a nice rally here recently, pulling right back. See if it continues. Not a project I've really watched lately. This is a name of yesteryear, and I have no idea if this project's even doing anything anymore or what. I remember for the longest time, man, Digibyte was like, had to be one of the most hyped names out there. I mean, endless marketing on Digibyte. But who knows? Who knows now? One. Let's get the Harmony. Yeah, staking's going live, 14% returns. That's always nice when you hear those numbers, but the risk is always, this, right? You got a 44% drop. Is it worth risking that for 14% returns? But I mean, longer term, I mean, heck, all-time lows for this guy. You'd like to see some sort of a bounce. You could argue there's a little bit, not much, but a little bit of a kind of a falling wedge setting up, maybe. It's definitely flat, not a very deep wedge. The more angled ones are better, but you could argue that. I'd be watching the moving averages on the daily chart. If it gets above 34 sats, maybe. Let's see here. Let me go to Tezos. Tezos, yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, Tezos was definitely one to be watching. It had previously been one of the stronger names. Look at where it pulled back. I mean, the yellow line here marks this prior high, pulled right back to it, bouncing off there. That looks great. Now, what I'd be watching too is this, though, right? It's coming into some trend line resistance here. So you want to see this one continue. And if you really dial it in here, this most recent price action, I mean, that's just textbook symmetrical triangle pattern. So, you know, it's gonna break out of this one way or the other really soon here. You know, and it's, you know, by definition, it's a continuation pattern on the shorter time frames. So you'd be leaning bullish on the 4-hour, but because the big picture view is still hitting right into resistance, you know, you got to be a little cautious still. All right, so I'm guessing maybe that's it here. What else? Let me think if I had anything else I wanted to cover today. Thanks for jumping on, guys. Thanks for the likes, by the way. And so for those of you that missed it, I did cover BTC at the start after a little bit of a intro talking about my prior videos. And my very first video, we're hitting the 3-year anniversary for the YouTube channel here this month, and I was watching my first video today, you know, before the start of this stream, and it was cracking me up. The poor quality of my YouTube channel, oh man! But I was laughing. It was actually quite funny. But oh, memories. Any stuff on stocks? Yeah, just, you know, just big picture view. Looking at, you know, the bounce here, I think we're due for a pullback. We've bounced right into the weekly moving averages that I was watching for here. Certainly the NASDAQ is much stronger than the S&P, but that's mostly because you got names like Amazon and Netflix, the FANGs. Some of them are bouncing much stronger in this virtual quarantined world. But other things, right? The broader economy is represented more by the S&P, and so you have names in there that I don't think are done just yet. You got the banks, and you've got real estate in there and all that, and that's definitely going to take some time to recover. Let's go look at Uber. Uber. I can't imagine Uber's doing well right now. I know people are buying like delivery, not taken out, but I mean, this company's not making money as it was, and revenues have really declined lately. Earnings is not coming out until late May on this guy, so who knows. But it's bouncing right into some resistance here. I'd be watching it in and around here. There is a gap, a weekly gap, so maybe it wants to fill that first and then drop. So, you know, into there. But after $30, $31, I'd be cautious on that guy. Looks like it's ready to drop a little bit. So don't buy the gold. I don't have anything against the gold ETF. I think it's better, honestly, if you're trading. I would prefer the gold ETF over the bullion if you're just trading, because the bullion's going to cost you way too much in fees if you're trading. If you just want some insurance, then yeah, you probably want bullion so you have it in your hands. But if you're trading, then look at the GLD or the GDX, which is the gold stocks. And then at that point, if you're trading stocks, then if you're looking at the GDX, you got to look at the nugget and the dust, right? The alternatives to those two. The leveraged alternatives. So those are the two that I look at. But from a longer term view, if you're just going to hold in, you know, there's nothing wrong with GDX or even options on GDX, because then you get some leverage there at that point. But it's just kind of an interesting scenario right now with the dollar. It's been very volatile, and gold is very much an anti-currency and anti-dollar. So if the dollar really starts to tank, you'll get gold dropping. If the economy suddenly starts to look fantastic and things are getting excited, and the dollar rallies even more, I think that's going to be bearish on gold, and you can see a little bit of a pullback. But no doubt, the macro trend for gold is still going higher. Longer term targets, I'm thinking we at least hit 1,800, maybe even take out the old highs and make a new all-time high. At that point, you'd be looking at $2,000 gold. But we've already come a long ways. It wasn't that long ago where we were talking $1,200 gold, and you know, here we are, 1,600. So it's been a nice bounce. So what's the verdict on Bitcoin? All right, you just joined. So for those of you that did join late, my one-word summary: bearish near term. 2-word summary. And so that's it. I'm basically leaning bearish still because of the macro view. I think we have some more pullback to go. I hope I'm wrong, but the key levels to be watching again, 7K on the upside, 6,600 on the downside, a daily close on either side of those, and I think that sets the direction for the near term. And so that's what I'm looking for. But longer term, again, I think we need to pull back on the weekly chart. We're in the process of doing that now. A little bit deeper would be better. Set a higher low and then start bouncing. And then that starts to set up the bigger picture bullish case. But for now, you know, just keep in mind, after the big drop we've had, the last 2 months have been just crazy, unprecedented. We're in uncharted territory, no doubt. And so this has just been a very nice bounce from there on lower volume along the way up. So I'm thinking we need to pull back. And then at that point, you start to establish some sort of support levels, longer term levels, and then go from there. But yeah, Bitcoin definitely tracking to the stock market right now. When stocks are red, I've noticed Bitcoin has a red day and vice versa, generally speaking. And so until the whole pandemic COVID thing passes us over, I think they're going to remain in sync because that's what they're looking at right now. The bigger story is the global markets and not so much the halving or any micro industry specific things like, you know, Bitcoin ETFs or regulations or anything like that. So, okay. I'm thinking that's it, my friends. So thanks for joining. Thanks for the likes, and I'll see you all in the next one.